Good evening. Sigmund Freud's theory about this was formerly called parapraxis, the idea that a slip of the tongue may be a mistake, but it is not an accident. That if you meant to say, what am I going to do about my life, and instead you say, what am I going to do about my wife, your wife may be a bigger problem than you want to admit. Our fifth story on the countdown, the President of the United States revealing today for the first time ever details of a terrorist plot he claims the government disrupted, an attempt by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to crash another jet into the, quote, Liberty Tower in Los Angeles. But the name of the building was the Library Tower, and parapraxis insists that would be more than just a slip. Could be a revelation, could be truth trying to escape, could be an obsession with the word liberty, or an inversion to the word library. Psychological mumbo-jumbo? Maybe. Except the mayor of Los Angeles has now come out and said nobody warned him that Mr. Bush was going to make that speech and scare the crap out of Los Angeles. Liberty, in this case, fleeting. The tower to which Mr. Bush was referring, commonly referred to as the Library Tower, the White House taking the rare step of correcting the president's slip, whether it was Freudian or not. Library? Didn't the First Lady used to work in one?
We now know that in October 2001, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of the September the 11th attacks, had already set in motion a plan to have terrorist operatives hijack an airplane using shoe bombs to breach the cockpit door and fly the plane into the tallest building on the West Coast. We believe the intended target was Liberty Tower in Los Angeles, California.
It's all academic now anyway. The place has since been renamed the U.S. Bank Tower. Second tallest building on the West Coast, sir. As we mentioned, the mayor of L.A. blindsided by the president's remarks, saying that today was the first time all of the details about the plot were disclosed, even to him, and raising the eternal question, why now?
I think everybody's wondering, well, it makes you wonder what the motivation was. But I don't want to speculate on what the motivation was, because that's something you should ask the president.
For a reality check, time now to call in Gerald Posner, investigative journalist, author of Why America Slept, The Failure to Prevent 9/11, and we're glad to say frequent guest here on Countdown. Good to talk to you again, sir.
Good to talk to you, Keith.
Was this a real plot to your knowledge?
I think it was a real plot in the sense that you had some fellows out in Southeast Asia, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who would have loved to have flown more airliners into more American buildings, but it wasn't a plot that all of a sudden, like in 24, they stopped on the eve of the execution of this plot taking place. It just happened to unravel, and the people were eventually arrested.
There's no overt reference in the president's speech about how NSA spying played a role in uncovering this plot, but the implication is placed there, if by nothing else, by the nature of the current political debate. Any sense that NSA spying or spying of any kind in this country was at all involved in interfering with these plans?
Not at all, Keith. As a matter of fact, I worked the phones today, and everybody told me pretty much the same thing. If this had been an instance in which the NSA spying had been involved, the president would have had this on bright lights. We would have been hearing about it. It just wasn't the case.
I mentioned how rare it is for the White House to speak in more than just vague terms about plots of any kind. Even the mayor of L.A. saying he did not know all the information that was in the speech today. He certainly did not know the speech was coming. Why did this speech occur? What was accomplished by it?
What was accomplished by it, they're really trying to get built up, I think, for the Patriot Act. They're trying to pass more parts of the Patriot Act, and at the same time, I think they're also looking at getting this scandal off of them, which is the NSA hearing scandal, something they're having trouble with.
Getting the name of the building wrong, obviously we can go into it psychologically, but perhaps I could ask you from a counter-terror point of view, getting the name and the size of the dimensions of the building wrong in the speech about it, is that an accident? Is it irrelevant to this? What part does that play in all of this?
It's a typical Bushism. It's something I'm not surprised with. This is a president who gets the details wrong sometimes, even when it comes to something as important as what the target might be in a possible terrorist attack on the west coast of the United States. I just shake my head when I hear that happen.
The White House also saying today that it was able to disclose these plot details now because they no longer have intelligence value. Do you concur with that assessment?
Boy, not at all. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, I've seen this game played by Democratic and Republican administrations. The Bush administration plays hardball with it all the time. When they decide that something doesn't have intelligence values, they release it for political purposes, as they did today. They want to get the Patriot Act through, and they want to make sure that they try to quell all this furor taking place over the NSA domestic spying routine. So they say it has no value at all. But I'll tell you, everything else, they're still holding on to information from World War II. We can't get documents released on the Kennedy assassination, yet here's the president disclosing details of what happened on 9/11 just a couple of years ago.
We have talked before with deep sadness about the politicizing of counterterror measures here. You have just put this into a political context. My stomach is queasy as I ask this. In the context of this today and what you have seen, are we far enough removed from that component of the novel 1984, the part where the government turns a kind of terror faucet on and off to scare the public into acquiescing to whatever it wants to do?
Look, I'm afraid we are, unfortunately, at that point where, look, we are in a real war. There's no question about it. We have fundamentalists out there who would love to kill more innocent Americans in vast numbers. They'd love to pull off a weapon of mass destruction attack. But at the same time, the government is also very effective, the Bush administration, as using terror as a political weapon and making sure that it does turn on the fear spigot when it wants to and turn it off at other times. Franklin Roosevelt did it, 6 decades ago after Pearl Harbor had been hit. Every time a Japanese sub would be spotted 200 miles off the coast of California, or a German sub somewhere out in the middle of the Atlantic, they would raise fears about another invasion taking place. So administrations have done this, but the Bush administration does it relentlessly, and they do it very effectively.
I grew up listening to LBJ tell me that we might be bombed into the Stone Age tomorrow by the Russians, and it appears that half of the Russian weapons would never have gotten out of their silos. So give me a final perception, a reality check on this. The overall threat to this country right now by these international terrorists is perceived by the administration as what on a scale of 1 to 10, and perceived by you and others who look at this realistically as what on a scale of 1 to 10?
I think the administration perceives it as a 6 to 7. Many of us who follow this view it right now as the threat to America is a 2 or 3, with the potential, and I give this as a major caveat, Keith, there's a potential for a spike up at any moment, and that is if at some point a successful small weapon of mass destruction can be used in this country, it will be used by the terrorists. That's the real potential threat, but that's a long-term threat. That could take place anywhere from now to literally the next 10 or 15 years. Otherwise, the threat level, I think, is lower today than it has been in the last couple of years.
Investigative journalist and author Gerald Posner, as always, sir, especially in these circumstances, great thanks for your forthrightness and great thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.